The knife slipped from her trembling fingers, clattering against the marble countertop.
Everything is gonna be alright.
Naomi pressed her back
Just
to the
sleep with me.
refrigerator's frozen steel, trying to quiet the ragged sobs shaking her out of her skin. The Golden Dragon's letter lay open beside the sink, its words burning through her mind. Your sister dies tomorrow unless you deliver what we asked. For 3 weeks she'd survived inside this mansion of secrets. Polishing silver worth more than her medical school tuition, bowing whenever blood-stained men whispered in Korean about territories and shipments. 3 weeks of practiced invisibility. And now it was over. She couldn't do it, couldn't betray the man whose coffee she poured every morning into cups she wasn't even allowed to touch with bare hands. The kitchen door slid open with deliberate, terrifying silence. He filled the doorway. 6'4", dragon-inked muscles slick with sweat, shirt hanging open to a body carved like vengeance itself. His midnight eyes, sharp, unreadable, softened for a single, impossible heartbeat when they found her trembling on the floor. Jae-woo Kim himself. The Ghost. The most feared Korean Mafia boss on the entire West Coast. The man whose name was whispered in alleys and boardrooms with equal terror. The man who reportedly once killed 3 rival enforcers with nothing but a fountain pen, never breaking a sweat, never showing mercy. She tried to straighten, to wipe away the evidence of her breakdown, but her body betrayed her with another sob that tore through her chest like broken glass. His eyes, those bottomless obsidian eyes that missed nothing, dropped to the letter on the counter. The air changed instantly. Went cold and sharp as the blade she'd dropped. He moved with that lethal, predatory grace that made him seem more phantom than man, crossing the kitchen in 3 silent strides. Close enough that she could smell the sandalwood and gunpowder on his skin. Close enough to kill her with his bare hands if he wanted. But instead, he reached out with surprising gentleness to tilt her chin upward, forcing her to meet his gaze. Who made you cry? He asked, his voice dropping to something soft and deadly. And then, with the casual certainty of a man who solved problems with permanent efficiency, he added. And how would you like their body disposed of? Welcome back, my fierce hearts and midnight dreamers. Before we dive deeper into this dangerous dance between vulnerability and power, make sure you're subscribed. Hit that like button and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing our little dark romance family stretch across cities, countries, and time zones. Every click, every comment, every bit of love you leave here helps us keep unraveling these dangerous love stories together. So find your quiet place, dim the lights, and get ready. The night is just beginning. The question should have terrified her. Should have reminded her exactly what kind of man she worked for. What kind of darkness lived behind those expensive tailored suits and that calculating gaze that missed nothing. Ever. But instead, something warm and desperate unfurled inside her chest. Because for the first time since Maya disappeared into witness protection, someone was offering to shoulder her burdens. To eliminate her problems with the kind of permanent efficiency that only a man like Jae-woo Kim could provide. A man who commanded an empire built on fear and loyalty and blood. She opened her mouth to lie, to brush it off as nothing, to maintain the professional distance that had kept her employed and alive for these past 3 weeks. But the words died in her throat when she saw the way his jaw clenched, the way his free hand curled into a fist at his side, as if he was physically restraining himself from hunting down whoever had caused her tears. From painting the city red until she smiled again. But then his eyes, those black bottomless eyes that missed nothing, dropped to her hands. To the letter she'd been clutching like a death sentence she couldn't escape. The air froze between them. Naomi, he said, and this time her name sounded different. Dangerous. Like a question and an accusation and a promise all wrapped into 2 syllables. She couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't do anything but watch as Jae-woo Kim, the ghost, the man who treated her with more professional respect in 3 weeks than any employer in her entire life, reached down and gently, so impossibly gently, took the letter from the counter. Golden dragons, he said, his voice soft as silk, deadly as poison as he scanned the contents. Did they promise your sister would be safe if you cooperated? Because they lied, Naomi. And then, while she watched in absolute horror, He pulled out his phone and began typing with one hand, his eyes never leaving the paper, his expression hardening with each word he read. No. The plea tore from her throat before she could stop it, her hands reaching desperately to snatch back the letter. But he was faster, always faster, catching her wrists with one hand while he continued typing with the other, his eyes finally lifting to meet hers with an expression that was somehow tender and terrifying all at once. I've known about your sister for 14 days, Jae-woo said quietly, releasing her wrists so he could cup her face in both hands, forcing her to look at him even though she wanted to disappear. Wanted to run. Wanted anything but this. I've known about Maya since before you walked through my door, he continued, using her sister's name like a weapon that cut straight through every defense Naomi had built. Known she was in witness protection after testifying against the Golden Dragon's human trafficking operation. Known they've been hunting her since the indictments. Naomi's legs gave out. Only his hands kept her upright. I've been watching you, he continued, using a Korean endearment that meant something precious, something cherished. Watching you take midnight shifts so you could send her money through 5 different accounts. Watching you refuse to use your real name on any documentation. Watching you jump every time my security team enters a room. She couldn't speak. Could barely breathe. His thumb brushed away a tear. And do you know what I learned, watching you scrub my floors and wash my dishes and pretend you weren't terrified every second of every day? She shook her head, the motion small and trapped between his palms. I learned you'd rather die than betray the people you care about. That even when they threatened Maya, when they sent you pictures of her apartment, her routine, her vulnerabilities, you couldn't bring yourself to do what they asked. You chose to break down alone in my kitchen at 3 a.m. rather than become the traitor they wanted. Please, she whispered, the word breaking in her throat. Please don't hurt her. She's innocent. She was just trying to save those girls. If you want to punish someone, punish me. But please, not Maya. Something that might have been a smile, dark and possessive, curved Jae-woo's lips. He leaned down until his forehead rested against hers. Until she could feel his breath against her skin. Until there was nothing in the world but him and the terrible, impossible thing he was about to say. Naomi Washington, he whispered. The Golden Dragons tried to turn you against me and failed. Do you know what that means in my world? She shook her head, tears streaming freely now. It means you've earned something very few people ever receive from me. His hands tightened on her face. Not painfully, but possessively. Like he was claiming something that had always belonged to him. Protection. Her heart stopped. Shattered. Reformed into something new and terrifying. Your life. Your sister's life. Everything you are and everything you love now has my shield. She tried to pull back, to process his words, but his grip was unyielding. We're going to get them, Naomi, he said, his voice dropping to a deadly promise that sent shivers racing down her spine. And then, you and I are going to burn the entire Golden Dragon organization to the ground. Together. He pulled back just enough to look into her eyes, and what she saw there wasn't anger or betrayal or even triumph. It was something infinitely more dangerous. It was obsession. Welcome to the family, Jagiya, Jae-woo said, his smile sharp enough to cut. Now, let me show you what happens to people who threaten what's mine. But to understand how a maid ended up standing in a killer's kitchen with desperation in her heart, you have to go back. Back to 4 weeks earlier, when Naomi Washington was just a desperate woman with a sister in hiding and no options left. Back to the moment she walked through the doors of the Kim family's legitimate staffing agency and sold her soul for minimum wage and a chance to keep Maya alive. Back to the day she met the ghost and learned that some men don't just kill you. Some men own you. And some kinds of ownership feel dangerously close to salvation. The home office hit me like a cold wave. All sleek black lacquer and floor-to-ceiling windows that framed Seattle's skyline like a postcard from hell. Rain hammered the glass in sheets, each drop catching the neon glow from below, turning the room into a kaleidoscope of red and blue shadows. My feet barely touched the hardwood floor as Jae-woo pulled me forward. His grip on my wrist neither cruel nor gentle, just absolute. The kind of touch that said, "You don't get to fall apart yet." I tried to wrench free anyway, my voice cracking. "Please, Maya needs to know they found her. They said they've been watching her building for days." The words dissolved into hiccuping sobs because my brain couldn't process it anymore. The blackmail that wasn't working. The test I'd failed by not being a traitor. The way this man had read me like an open book while I thought I was invisible. Jae-woo released me so suddenly I stumbled, catching myself on the edge of a desk that looked worth more than my parents' house. The surface was immaculate, a single laptop, a stack of files, and a silver letter opener that gleamed like a promise of violence. He moved to the window, his bare back to me, and I saw the full artwork for the first time. The dragon wasn't just on his shoulders. It coiled down his spine in obsidian ink, scales so detailed they seemed to shift with each breath. The Kim crest sat at the base, a tiger emerging from cherry blossoms. His shoulders carried scars, thin white lines that spoke of knives that had gotten too close. Deeper puckered circles that could only be bullet wounds. "You think I'm the monster," he said, voice low enough that I had to stop crying to hear it. "You're standing in my home, blackmailed because of me, and you think I'm the villain in this story? You read my private mail." The accusation burst from me, sharp and desperate. "You could have just told me you knew. You didn't have to let me suffer." He turned, and the city lights behind him made a halo of rain-fractured color around his silhouette. His face was all brutal angles, sharp jaw and sharper cheekbones. Lips that looked carved from stone. But his eyes, God. His eyes were the worst part. Dark and depthless. They didn't just look at me. They dissected me, peeling back every defense until I felt naked despite my uniform still clinging to my skin. "If I'd told you, you would have run. Warned them. Gotten yourself killed trying to move your sister before sunrise." He approached slowly, each step deliberate. A predator who knew his prey had nowhere to go. The golden dragons don't forgive disloyalty, Naomi. They needed to believe you were trying, that you were close to breaking, that the information was coming. So I gave them a performance through you, and you gave me the truth. My hands fisted in my stained apron. What truth? That I'm a coward. That I can't even save my own sister. That you're not a traitor. His voice softened. Barely. Just enough to feel like a caress instead of a command. The dragons have sent dozens before you. Smiling delivery boys. Friendly drivers. A gardener once. His gaze flicked to a nearly invisible scar along his collarbone. Some got further than others. None of them hesitated. You did. Even with your sister's life on the line, you couldn't betray my trust. I bit my lip hard enough to taste metal. She's all I have. After our parents died, she's the only family, and she was just trying to help those girls. They were trafficking children, and she was the only one brave enough to speak up, and now. My voice shattered. And now she's running for her life, and you're playing games. Something flickered across Jae-woo's face, gone too fast to name. He moved past me to the wall, his fingers finding a seam I hadn't noticed. With a soft click, a panel slid open, revealing a bank of monitors that hummed to life with cold blue light. The air left my lungs. 6 screens. 6 different angles. One showed the mansion's exterior, the same sweeping driveway I'd walked up this morning, now empty and rain-soaked. Another showed the garage, where black SUVs gleamed under fluorescent lights. The third made my knees buckle. Maya's apartment. The image was grainy but clear enough to see the small living room, the kitchenette, the second-hand furniture we'd picked out together when she'd first gone into hiding. But she wasn't alone. A man sat in the shadows by her window, broad-shouldered and still, with something dark resting across his lap. It took my brain a second to register it as a gun. You. I couldn't form words. You have someone watching her. 3 people. Jae-woo's voice came from behind me, close enough that his breath stirred my hair. Rotation every 6 hours. The Golden Dragons own part of the building management, but they don't own the security company or the coffee shop across the street. My men have been inside since the day they made first contact with you. I spun, and suddenly he was right there, inches away, his chest a wall of ink and muscle and heat. Why? You don't know us. Maya's nothing to you. I'm just the woman who washes your dishes. He tilted his head, studying me like I was a puzzle missing pieces. You think that's all I see? His hand rose and I flinched before I could stop myself. He froze, jaw tightening, then deliberately, slowly reached past me to tap a command on the screen. A new window opened. A file directory with my name at the top. Naomi Elise Washington, 24. Sister of Maya Jane Washington, currently in unofficial witness protection after testifying in the Golden Dragons trafficking case. Parents deceased, car accident when you were 17, Maya was 15. Full scholarship to pre-med at UW, dropped out junior year when your sister went into hiding. His finger scrolled, almost lazy. You applied to the staffing agency 3 weeks ago. They placed you here in 48 hours. Fastest hire on record. My stomach turned to ice. You own the agency. I own 6 of them. Domestic staffing makes an excellent front. He glanced at me, something almost like amusement tugging at the corner of his mouth. The dragons think they're clever, embedding you in my home. They don't realize I let them. I bought your contract the day it was filed. Every move you've made, every call you've taken, every tear you've cried in my kitchen, I've been watching. The violation of it hit like a slap. You sick. Careful. The word cracked like a whip. And suddenly his hand was around my throat, not squeezing, just there. A reminder of how easily he could. His thumb pressed against my racing pulse, feeling the proof of my terror. You came into my home to spy for my enemies. I had every right to put a bullet in you the moment you crossed the threshold. Instead, I protected you. I kept your sister alive when the dragons would have killed her the second they realized you were stalling. So before you call me sick, ask yourself who the real predators are here. Tears burned hot and shameful. Then why? If you knew, why let it get this far? His thumb stroked once, featherlight over my hammering heartbeat. The tenderness of it was worse than violence. Because I needed to know if you were one of them, or if you were just a desperate sister backed into a corner. His eyes searched mine, and for the first time, I saw something beneath the ice. Something raw and almost human. You're not Golden Dragon. You're collateral damage. And I don't let them break innocent things in my city. He released me, stepping back, and I gasped even though he hadn't been choking me. My hand flew to my throat, feeling the ghost warmth of his palm. Get changed, he said, nodding to a door I hadn't noticed. We leave in 20 minutes. Where are we going? I laughed, high and brittle. To confront the people who want us both dead. Great plan. No. Jae-woo moved to a side door. His closet, I realized. We're going to see your sister. It's time she knew who's really been keeping her alive these past 3 weeks. He disappeared inside, leaving me standing in the dark with the monitors glowing like cold stars and Maya's apartment flickering on the screen. So close and yet a world away. I walked to the window, pressing my forehead against the cold glass, and whispered to my reflection, "What have you gotten us into?" The city didn't answer. It never did. The car was black, sleek, and smelled like leather and gun oil. I sat in the back beside Jae-woo wearing clothes that fit too well, black jeans, a cashmere sweater the color of midnight, boots that looked like they belonged in a fashion magazine, not on actual pavement. He'd handed them to me without explanation, and I'd been too numb to argue. His driver, introduced only as Sung, navigated Seattle streets like he knew every shortcut, every blind spot. Rain hammered the roof, turning the world outside into a watercolor blur. Jae-woo hadn't spoken since we left the mansion. He sat with one arm stretched across the back of the seat, not touching me, but close enough that I felt the heat of him. The coiled tension that suggested he could explode into violence at any second. "Why are you really doing this?" I asked finally, because the silence was suffocating. "This isn't just about keeping your enemies close." He didn't look at me. Just watched the city slide past. The golden dragons took something from me once. Someone. His jaw tightened. I was 22. Just starting to take over the family business after my father's stroke. There was a girl, Min, daughter of my father's accountant. We grew up together. She was. He paused, searching for words that seemed to evade him. She was innocent. The kind of person who believed everyone had good inside them. Even me. My heart clenched. What happened to her? The dragons happened. Flat. Factual. Devastating. They wanted my father's shipping routes. When negotiations broke down, they took her. Sent pieces back for 3 days. By the time I found her, there wasn't enough left to bury properly. The hollowness in his voice made my skin crawl. This wasn't grief. It was something beyond grief. Something that had calcified into something so cold it burned. "I'm sorry," I whispered, meaning it. He finally looked at me, and his eyes were full of ghosts. "Don't be." It taught me that mercy is a luxury I can't afford. That the only way to protect what matters is to be more ruthless than your enemies. His H. And moved, fingers brushing my shoulder so lightly I might have imagined it. "But you remind me of her. Not in looks, not in background. But in the way you leave extra food in the staff refrigerator for the night security. The way you hum when you think no one's listening. The way you still believe in things like justice and family and sacrifice." "I'm not her," I wanted to say. "I can't fix what they broke in you." "I know you're not," he said, as if reading my mind. "But you deserved better than being caught in our war. So did your sister. I couldn't save Min, but I can save you both." The car stopped. I blinked, realizing we'd pulled up to an apartment building I didn't recognize. Modern and nondescript, the kind of place that housed young professionals and small families. "Maya's not at her apartment," I said, confused. "No. She's here. Has been for 3 days." Already out of the car, he opened my door, offering his hand. Since the golden dragon started closing in. I took his hand because I had no choice and let him lead me inside, past a security desk where the guard nodded at him like he owned the place. He probably did. Into an elevator that climbed to the 12th floor. My pulse hammered in my ears, drowning out the soft jazz playing overhead. The elevator opened onto a hallway that could have been in any building in the city. Neutral carpet. Inoffensive art. Doors with peepholes and brass numbers. Jae-woo pulled me down the corridor, past apartments with muted televisions and dinner smells seeping under doorways, until we reached 1207. A woman in a suit stood outside, compact and lethal-looking. She stepped aside without a word. Inside, the apartment was warm and bright. Nothing like the sterile safe house I'd been expecting. There were plants on the windowsills. Books stacked on coffee tables. It smelled like someone had been baking. And in the kitchen doorway, wooden spoon in hand, stood my sister. "Maya," I breathed. My sister looked good. Better than she had in months. Her braids were freshly done, piled high on her head. She was wearing actual makeup. Her Fulani earrings, the ones our grandmother had given her, caught the light as she turned. "Know me?" Her voice broke on my nickname, and then she was rushing forward, and I was running too, and we collided in the middle of the living room, holding each other so tight I could feel her heart hammering against mine. "I don't understand," I said, pulling back to look at her, to touch her face, to make sure she was real. "How are you here? How did he?" Maya's eyes flicked past me to where Jae-woo stood silently by the door. "Mr. Kim moved me 3 days ago. Said it wasn't safe at the old place anymore." She lowered her voice, though not enough. I thought he was going to kill me, know me. He showed up with 3 people in suits, told me to pack only what I could carry in 5 minutes. I nearly jumped out the bathroom window, but then. She glanced at Jae-woo again, something like awe in her expression. He showed me pictures. Of the men watching my building. Of you working in his house. He knew everything, know me. Everything. The trafficking case. The threats. Even about the blackmail. I couldn't breathe. Why didn't you tell me you were safe? He wouldn't let me. Said they were monitoring your phone. That we needed them to think I was still vulnerable. Maya squeezed my hands. I've been going crazy not being able to contact you, but he promised you were safe. That he was watching over you. My legs felt weak. I turned to look at Jae-woo, who still stood by the door, watching our reunion with an expression I couldn't read. Why? I asked, the question that had been burning through me since the kitchen. Why go to all this trouble for strangers? He was quiet for a moment, then moved into the room, his presence immediately dominating the cozy space. Because the golden dragons think they can use you to get to me. And I don't let anyone use what's mine. He looked at Maya. Your sister has been loyal under extreme pressure. She deserves to know the truth. Maya nodded, like they'd had this conversation before. Show her. Jae-woo pulled out his phone, tapped something, and handed it to me. On the screen was a photograph. A group of men in suits, standing outside what looked like a warehouse. I recognized the Golden Dragon leader, Chen Wei, from news reports about the trafficking case. Beside him stood a man I'd seen in Jae-woo's house. One of his lieutenants. That's Min-ho, Jae-woo said. My uncle. My father's younger brother. I looked up, confused. He works for you. No. Jae-woo's voice went flat. He works for them. Has been for years. Selling our shipping routes. Our security protocols. Our personnel files. The implications hit me like a truck. He gave them my employment application. My connection to Maya. Yes. And when they realized who your sister was, they saw an opportunity. Use you to get intelligence on my operation, or ideally, get you close enough to kill me. His smile was cold. They've been trying for years. Ever since I took over and started dismantling their trafficking network. Maya moved beside me, her hand finding mine. The girls I helped rescue, the ones I testified about. They were being moved through a shipping company Mr. Kim's father used to own. When Jae-woo took over after his father's stroke, he discovered what was happening and shut it down. Cut ties with the dragons completely. They've been at war ever since, I murmured, pieces clicking into place. And your uncle never forgave you for costing him money. Family is complicated, Jae-woo said, and for the first time, I heard something like weariness in his voice. Min-ho practically raised me after my mother died. Taught me to fight. To survive in this world. And all the while, he was selling our people to the dragons. Letting them take girls like the ones your sister saved. The betrayal in his voice cut deep. This wasn't just business. This was personal in a way I was only beginning to understand. So what happens now? I asked. They think I'm still trying to spy on you. They think Maya's still at the old apartment. Now, he said, we give them exactly what they want. Which is? His smile was terrible and beautiful. Me. Walking into a trap I know is waiting. The safe house apartment had 3 bedrooms. Maya took one, Jae-woo another, and I was given a third. A space with neutral walls and a bed so comfortable I should have fallen asleep instantly. Instead, I stared at the ceiling, listening to rain against the windows and trying to process how my life had imploded so completely in the span of 24 hours. My sister was alive. Safe. The man I'd been secretly watching for weeks had been watching me right back. And tomorrow, we were apparently going to walk into a trap set by one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the Pacific Northwest. A soft knock broke my spiraling thoughts. I sat up. "Come in." The door opened, and Jae-woo stood there, now dressed in black sweatpants and a t-shirt that did nothing to hide the muscle beneath. He looked different somehow. Less like a crime lord and more like a man who couldn't sleep. "You should rest," he said. "Tomorrow will be difficult." "That's why I can't." I pulled my knees to my chest. "I keep thinking about all the ways this could go wrong." He hesitated, then stepped inside, closing the door behind him. The room immediately felt smaller, charged with something I couldn't name. "You're afraid." "Not a question. Of course I'm afraid. These people tried to use me to kill you. They threatened my sister. They traffic children." I looked at him directly. "And you want us to just, what? Walk in and say hello?" He moved to the window, looking out at the rain-soaked city below. "The plan isn't for you to confront them. That's my job. You and Maya will be safe, far away. Then why even tell us? Why not just handle it yourself?" He turned, and in the dim light from the window, his eyes were bottomless. "Because I needed you to understand what's happening. Why it's happening." He paused. "And because after tomorrow, you'll have a choice to make." "What choice?" "Whether you want to disappear with Maya, new identities, new city, new life, or whether you want to stay." The word hung between us. Heavy with meaning I wasn't sure I was ready to face. "Stay," I repeated. "As your maid." Something flickered across his face. "If that's what you want. And if it isn't?" He moved closer, until he stood at the foot of my bed. "Then we negotiate new terms." My heart hammered against my ribs. Why would I stay at all? Once the dragons are dealt with, once Maya's safe. Because you feel it too. His voice dropped lower. This thing between us. This pull. I see the way you watch me when you think I'm not looking. The way your breath changes when I enter a room. Heat flooded my face. I don't. Don't lie to me, Naomi. Soft but firm. Not now. Not after everything. He sat on the edge of the bed, and I felt the mattress dip under his weight. Felt the heat radiating from him. I've been alone since Sumin died. Alone by choice. Because the things I've done, the person I've become, I'm not fit for gentleness anymore. But with you. His hand found mine in the darkness, fingers interlacing. With you, I remember what it was like to want more than power. More than revenge. My throat went dry. I'm not her replacement. No. His grip tightened. You're something entirely new. Something I never expected to find crying in my kitchen at 3 a.m. He leaned closer, and I could smell him now, sandalwood and rain and something darker, richer. The golden dragons think they're using you to get to me. They don't realize it worked better than they could have imagined. Before I could respond, he was gone, rising from the bed and moving to the door with that lethal grace that reminded me exactly what he was. A predator. A killer. A man who lived by different rules than the rest of us. Get some sleep, Naomi. Tomorrow, we end this. And then. He didn't finish the sentence. Just closed the door behind him, leaving me in darkness with my racing heart and the ghost of his touch still warm on my hand. Morning came in shades of steel and ash, the rain still falling as if the sky itself was in mourning for what the day would bring. I found Jae-woo in the kitchen, speaking in hushed Korean with Sung and a woman I hadn't met before. 3 guns lay on the counter between them like casual breakfast accessories. They went silent when I entered, all eyes turning to assess me. I felt naked under their scrutiny, even in the clothes Jae-woo had provided, black jeans, a sweater that hugged my curves, boots that actually fit for once. Is Maya still asleep? Jae-woo asked, his voice giving nothing away. Yes. I moved to the coffee pot, needing something to do with my hands. She took a sleeping pill last night. Good. She'll be moved to a new location while we're gone. He dismissed the others with a nod, and they gathered the weapons before disappearing down the hall. You should eat something. I'm not hungry. The smell of coffee, rich and bitter, reminded me of mornings in his kitchen. Of the careful routine I'd established, making his coffee exactly how he liked it. Black, with 1 sugar. Never stirred clockwise. One of his many superstitions. You'll need your strength. It wasn't a suggestion. I poured coffee for us both, adding sugar to his out of habit, stirring counterclockwise. His eyebrow raised slightly at the gesture. What exactly is the plan here? I asked, pushing his mug across the counter. You still haven't told me. He took the coffee, his fingers brushing mine in a touch that felt deliberate. The Golden Dragons believe they have leverage over you. That you're going to help them access my private safe. Inside that safe are documents they desperately want. Shipping manifests, client lists, evidence that could destroy them. And do you actually keep those things in your safe? His smile was small and cold. Of course not. I keep them in a secure server in Singapore. The safe contains enough to be convincing but nothing that would truly damage my operations. So it's a trap within a trap. I leaned against the counter, watching him over the rim of my mug. They think I'm their spy, but I'm really yours. You're no one's spy, Naomi. His voice sharpened. You're not an asset or a pawn. You're a victim who's about to become a witness. A witness to what? He set down his mug, expression going distant. Justice. Retribution. Call it what you want. Today, the Golden Dragons lose everything they've built. And your uncle? I asked, the question hanging between us like a blade. What happens to him? Something dark flashed across Jae-woo's face. Family deserves special consideration. I didn't ask him to elaborate. Wasn't sure I wanted to know. What do you need me to do? I asked instead. Act normal. Scared, but determined. Like someone who's trying to save her sister. He moved around the counter until he stood before me, close enough that I could count his eyelashes. They'll be watching. They always are. That won't be acting, I admitted. I am scared. His hand came up to cup my face, the gesture startlingly tender from a man who radiated violence. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Just remember. His thumb traced my cheekbone. You're under my protection now. And I don't lose what's mine. The possessiveness should have repelled me. Should have reminded me that this man, however attractive, however surprisingly gentle with me, was still a criminal. A killer. Someone who viewed people as possessions to be claimed and protected. Instead, I felt something warm unfurl inside my chest. Something that had been frozen since the day Maya went into hiding. Since the day I realized I was truly alone in a world that didn't care if we lived or died. For the first time in months, I wasn't alone anymore. I had been claimed. Marked. Seen. It was terrifying. Exhilarating. Wrong in all the ways that somehow felt right. His phone buzzed, breaking the moment. He checked it, his expression hardening. Time to go. I nodded, setting down my half-finished coffee with hands that only trembled a little. Ready when you are. His eyes met mine, searching for something. Whatever he found made him nod once, decisive. Then let's go to war. The Golden Dragon headquarters masqueraded as a high-end nightclub in the International District. Red lacquer doors. Gilded dragons coiling around columns. Bass that vibrated the sidewalk even at midday when the place should have been closed. I sat in the back of Jae-woo's car, watching the rain blur the city into watercolors as we approached. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, so I buried them in the folds of my sweater, hoping no one would notice. Remember, Jae-woo said beside me, his voice steady and certain. You don't speak unless spoken to. You stay by my side. If anything happens, Sun gets you out. No arguments. I nodded, throat too dry for words. Maya was safely hidden in another safe house across town, surrounded by Jae-woo's most trusted people. The only reason I was here at all was because the Golden Dragons needed to see that their plan had worked, that I'd gained Jae-woo's trust. That I'd led him straight into their hands. "They'll kill you," I whispered, the fear I'd been holding back finally breaking through. "Your uncle, Hill. My uncle thinks I don't know about his betrayal." Jae-woo's hand found mine, squeezing once. "That gives us the advantage." The car stopped. I looked out at the club's entrance and felt my heart trying to climb into my throat. "Ready?" he asked. "No. God, no." I was a former pre-med student who cleaned houses for minimum wage. I wasn't ready for any of this. But I nodded anyway, because Maya's life depended on it. Because somewhere in the past 24 hours, I'd started to believe this impossible man might actually keep his promises. We walked in like we owned the place, Jae-woo's arm around my waist, his men flanking us. Inside, the club was all red velvet and black lacquer, dragons etched into every surface, watching with jeweled eyes that felt too alive. Men appeared from the shadows. Golden dragon soldiers, their tattoos visible even in the dim light. They didn't draw weapons. Didn't need to. The threat was implied in every line of their bodies. "Mr. Kim," one said in accented English. "Mr. Wei is waiting upstairs." I felt Jae-woo's arm tighten around me, a silent reminder to stay close. We followed the man up a sweeping staircase to a private room overlooking the dance floor. The room was opulent to the point of vulgarity. Gold everywhere. Plush seating. A bar stocked with bottles whose labels I couldn't read. And seated in the center, like a king holding court, was Chen Wei, the Golden Dragon leader. A man in his 50s with silver streaking his black hair and eyes like frozen obsidian. Beside him stood Min-ho, Jae-woo's uncle. The betrayer. He looked so much like his nephew it hurt, the same sharp jawline, the same broad shoulders. But where Jae-woo's eyes held cold calculation, Min-ho's held something worse. Something like hunger. "Nephew," Min-ho said in Korean, then switched to English. "You brought the maid. How domestic of you." Jae-woo didn't respond to the taunt. Instead, he guided me to a seat and remained standing, his body angled to keep me partially behind him. "Wei," he said, acknowledging only the dragon leader. "You wanted to meet. I'm here." Chen Wei smiled, all teeth and no warmth. "So formal, Jae-woo. After all our history." His gaze slid to me. "And you brought your little spy. The one who couldn't even open a safe properly." My cheeks burned with shame and anger, but I kept my expression neutral. Just a decoration. Just arm candy. That's what they needed to believe. "She's not important," Jae-woo said dismissively. "A distraction. Nothing more." The casualness with which he discarded me stung, even though I knew it was an act. Even though I could feel the tension in his body, the way he'd positioned himself between me and any potential threat. "Then why bring her?" Wei asked. "To show I understand the game." Jae-woo's voice was ice. "You tried to plant someone in my house. I knew from the beginning. And now she belongs to me instead of you." Wei's eyes narrowed. "And the sister? The witness who cost me so much. Dealt with." The two words dropped like stones. My blood ran cold at how easily the lie fell from his lips. At how convincing he was. I wondered how many times he'd done this, played a role, said what needed to be said to achieve his ends. "You'll forgive me if I don't take your word for it." Wei gestured, and one of his men approached with a tablet. "Perhaps a video call. I have men at her apartment. I'd like confirmation." Jae-woo's posture didn't change, but I felt the shift in him. The coiling of muscle, the preparation. "That won't be necessary." Min-ho stepped forward. "I've already confirmed it. The sister is no longer a concern." Wei frowned. "You didn't inform me." "Because it was family business." Minho looked at Jae-woo with something like pride. My nephew has finally shown he has the stomach for what's necessary. The room went very still. I could feel something building, a tension like the moment before lightning strikes. Is that what this is about, uncle? Jae-woo's voice was soft. Dangerous. Testing whether I have the stomach for necessary evils. Someone had to. Minho moved closer, circling like a predator. Your father was weak. Sentimental. When he fell ill, I had hopes you would be different. That you would embrace our true nature. Instead, you dismantled everything we built. Cut off profitable relationships. All because of one dead girl. Jae-woo didn't move. Didn't flinch. But I felt the fury radiating from him in waves. You knew, he said quietly. About Su-min. About what they would do to her. I warned you not to get attached. Minho shrugged. Business requires sacrifices. She wasn't a sacrifice. Jae-woo's voice dropped to something barely above a whisper. She was innocent. No one is innocent. Wei cut in, his patience clearly wearing thin. Now, shall we discuss the real reason for this meeting? Your shipping routes. Your distribution networks. Your political connections. You want me to hand over my father's legacy to you? Jae-woo's laugh was cold and brittle. After you took everything else. Not everything. Wei's gaze slid to me, calculating and cruel. You seem to have found a new weakness. A replacement for the last girl. And this one's family is even more vulnerable. The threat hung in the air like poison. I felt my heart rate double, my palms going slick with sweat. This wasn't just about business anymore. This was personal. Vicious. A revenge years in the making. You know what I think, Wei. Jae-woo took a step forward, his voice dropping to a register that made the hair on my arm stand up. I think you're afraid of me. I think you have been since the day I took over. Because unlike my father, unlike my uncle, I see you for exactly what you are. Wei's expression hardened. And what is that? A relic. A dinosaur clinging to old ways while the world changes around you. Jae-woo's smile was terrible. Children in shipping containers. Girls in basements. You think that's power? That's just depravity masquerading as business. Minho moved with the speed of a striking snake, his hand going to his jacket where a gun surely waited. You forget yourself, nephew. No, uncle. I remember. Jae-woo didn't even look at him. Kept his eyes fixed on Wei. I remember everything. Every lesson you taught me about family and loyalty and sacrifice. His hand moved to his own jacket, and suddenly the room was a powder keg, everyone tensed for violence. Enough. Wei raised a hand. We didn't come here to reminisce. We came to negotiate terms. There are no terms. Jae-woo's voice was final. There never were. I came here for one reason only. And what's that? Wei's patience was clearly at an end. To look you in the eyes when I tell you exactly what's happening right now. Jae-woo smiled, and it was the smile of a wolf. At this moment, federal agents are raiding 7 of your properties across the city. Your accounts are being frozen. Your shipments seized. Your lieutenants arrested. The room went dead silent. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't move. This wasn't the plan, at least, not the plan he'd shared with me. You're bluffing, Wei said, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. Check your phone, Jae-woo suggested. If you can get a signal through the jammers my team set up 5 minutes ago. Minho's face contorted with rage. You stupid, sentimental, his hand emerged with a gun, but before he could aim, the room exploded into chaos. The lights cut out. Emergency strobes kicked in, bathing everything in disorienting red flashes. I felt Jae-woo's hand on my arm, yanking me down behind the couch as gunfire erupted. Stay down, he hissed in my ear, pressing something cold and heavy into my hand. A gun. If anyone besides me comes around that corner, shoot them. And then he was gone, moving into the chaos with a grace that shouldn't have been possible in the strobing darkness. I heard shouts in Korean and Mandarin. More gunfire. The sickening sound of fists meeting flesh. I crouched behind the couch, gun clutched in sweating hands, and prayed to a God I hadn't spoken to since my parents' funeral. Prayed for Maya to stay safe in her hiding place. Prayed for Jae-woo to keep his impossible promise that we would all walk out of here alive. Something crashed nearby. I peeked around the edge of the couch and saw Minho struggling with one of Jae-woo's men. The older man had a knife now, and as I watched in horror, he drove it into the guard's side. The man crumpled. Minho turned, scanning the room, and his eyes locked with mine. His smile was a death sentence. He started toward me, blade gleaming red in the emergency lights. I raised the gun with shaking hands. Tried to remember everything I'd ever seen in movies about how to shoot. The weight was unfamiliar. Terrifying. The maid with a gun, Minho laughed, still advancing. How ambitious you've become. My finger found the trigger. I tried to steady my aim. He'll never choose you, you know. Minho's voice was conversational, as if we were discussing the weather instead of my imminent death. My nephew has a type. Innocent girls he can corrupt and discard. You're just the latest distraction. I didn't respond. Couldn't. My throat had closed with fear. You should have done as you were told. Betrayed him. At least then you might have saved your sister. He lunged, faster than I could track, and the gun went off in my hands. The recoil sent pain shooting up my arms, but Minho didn't fall. I'd missed. Of course I'd missed. I was a pre-med dropout, not a shooter. His hand closed around my throat, lifting me off my feet. The gun clattered to the floor. His face was inches from mine, his eyes so like Jae-woo's but emptied of everything human. I'll find your sister next, he promised, the blade rising toward my face. After I'm done with you. I clawed at his hand, stars dancing at the edges of my vision as air became a distant memory. This was it. This was how I died, in a nightclub, in a sweater that wasn't mine, at the hands of a man whose name I barely knew. And then the pressure vanished. I fell, gasping, as Minho's body jerked backward. Jae-woo stood behind him, one arm wrapped around his uncle's throat, the other driving a blade into his side, the same place Minho had stabbed the guard. You don't touch what's mine, Jae-woo hissed, twisting the knife. Not ever again. Minho's laugh was wet with blood. Still, sentimental. Still, weak. No. Jae-woo's voice was ice. Just selective about my monsters. The knife withdrew. Plunged again. Minho's body went limp, and Jae-woo let him fall, turning immediately to me. His face was spattered with blood. A cut above his eye leaked red down his cheek. But his eyes were clear and focused entirely on me. Naomi. His hands found my face, tilting it up, examining the bruise